Do I think that Jasmy has a good narrative moving forward? Arguably, I would say yes, even though nothing I say is financial advice, and let me explain why. Because not too long ago, there was a post on X, and it was actually by Jangshin. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, what is Jangshin, right? Jangshin is an incubation project under Jasmy. It's a layer 2 for decentralized AI. Quite simply, that's the way to take a look at it. But even besides that, Jangshin, the post on X was that they're thrilled to announce that Jangshin will power the infrastructure behind the next-gen AI music platform, DAIM. Now it's spelled DAIM. Now I've never heard about this, but the way you take a look at it is that this is pretty interesting nonetheless, because I think this is kind of setting the tone moving forward when it comes to Jasmy, because yes, usually when I think about Jasmy, I think about a project that's focused on data storage, more specifically decentralizing data storage, but also seeing something like Jangshin, that has been something that has, as of late, at least in my opinion, given more of this kind of energy when it comes to Jasmy, because it adds more layers, I think, to kind of Jasmy overall in terms of the perception. Like, for instance, I'm just going to reference the music streaming market size just as a little bit of an example as to why I think, arguably, music could be a good focus, let's say. Because, for instance, according to verified market research, the music streaming market service size is expected to be worth over $100 billion by 2030. That's pretty massive. I mean, if let's say that were to come true, that could very well be bigger than some countries' GDP. So I think that right there is very interesting nonetheless. At least it's not predicted to be the biggest market out there, arguably, but in my opinion, I still find it pretty fascinating nonetheless. And when it comes to Jasmy, right, more specifically, when I take a look at Jangshin, there's still a lot to prove. I still have to wait a very long time, in my opinion, to really know what it could ever really do in the grand scheme of things, because I want to see it like fully fifth gear type of 100% type of, mode, I would say, before I can really evaluate Jangshin. But so far, I find it very interesting. And let's not forget, again, Jangshin. It's a layer 2 for decentralized AI. Again, an incubation project under Jasmy. Why is, I think, AI so fantastic? It's because the AI market is predicted to reach nearly $2 trillion by 2030, according to Grandview Research. So that's a pretty big market, in my opinion. Not to mention, why do I think decentralized AI is, arguably something that I find interesting? It's because if I just take a look at the decentralization aspect, right? Let me just put an analogy or an example that I would use. Let's say, I wanted to hide my treasure, and I hid my treasure in 100 different locations as opposed to, like, let's say 5 different locations. That 5 locations, arguably, I would say that if it's in like close proximity or whatever, I would say that arguably it's very centralized. Now, what happens? If let's say 3 or 4 gets breached, that's like not that good, right? But if let's say it's in 100 different locations, let's say it's very decentralized, even if 5 gets breached or like 10, 20, the majority is still left. You know what I mean? This is my mentality. So the way I take a look at it is that decentralization, I think it is, something that I'm looking forward to when it comes to this. Now, not to mention, why is Jasmy being focused on decentralizing data storage? I think arguably a good thing. It's because the data storage market size is predicted to reach nearly $800 billion by 2030, according to Fortune Business Insights. So again, that's pretty massive. Not to mention, a lot of data storage nowadays, in my opinion, arguably is very centralized. So Jasmy bringing that kind of decentralization aspect, it could maybe be viewed as a cool thing, or a very revolutionary thing, I should say. Now, will the adoption be massive? Arguably, I would say, as of late, not really. I mean, a lot of data storage solutions out there are still very centralized, in my opinion. But who knows, right? 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Now, when I say that, though, some people may argue, oh, that's too long. But sometimes in this space, right, people usually care about the narrative, they care about the story, and I do think that this kind of showcases somewhat a good narrative and a good story. Let's say Jasmy were to go to the price of 25 cents. Considering current circulating supply at that point, market cap would be around $12.5 billion. It's around a 12x from here. So Jasmy has been beginning to have a pretty okay recovery, in my opinion. There might be some others out there that had a better recovery, but you know what? I'll still take this nonetheless as a pretty small victory, I would say. Now, it's not at the level it once was not too long ago, right? Like months ago, for instance. But then at the same time, I still think it's pretty decent nonetheless, seeing that when it comes to Jasmy. I think it showcases that Jasmy isn't forgotten about. The community I find very passionate. I think it is, very driven, I would say. And I think that Jasmy has more of a cool factor in terms of my perception when compared to something like, Scicoin, Arweave, or let's say, something like Storj or Storage, whatever the name is, because sometimes people like to say Storj or Storage, but it's spelled like STORJ. But yeah, besides that point, even though I'm bullish on those projects in terms of, because I do like, these projects that are focused on the data storage market, I will say that I find Jasmy just cooler in a sense, where I think the vibe just feels more kind of cool. And I don't know, I mean, it is kind of unexplainable, but it just has that cool factor in my opinion. Maybe because if I take a look at Jasmy, it is orange, right? So it kind of reminds me of like Bitcoin. And also, not to mention, Jasmy even has the nickname of the Bitcoin of Japan, which is arguably down to the notion that Jasmy is legally compliant as a cryptocurrency in the country of Japan. So I think maybe that has something to do with it. I like the nickname. I like, the orange when it comes to Jasmy. Not to mention, I think Jasmy has a pretty, rock solid team. I mean, its management team is filled with many people who used to work at places like Sony. And when I think about Sony, I think about the PlayStation 5, or just like PlayStation in general. But I'm saying, for instance, the first PlayStation I ever got was the PlayStation 3. I thought it was so cool. But of course, then eventually I got the 4, and then there's the PlayStation 5. But I'm just saying, I think Jasmy overall has this cool factor that really can't be designed for, because let's face it, right? I mean, other projects out there, they can design the fundamentals, they can design kind of the concept behind it, but I think having that sort of cool factor can't be designed for. Having that good community, I think, can't really be preemptively designed, right? Because that just requires a certain type of vibe, in my opinion. And I think, for whatever reason, I see that when it comes to Jasmy. Again, I can maybe design a project to have good fundamentals, but I can't design whether or not people are going to like it, right? I cannot design whether or not people are going to find it cool. And for whatever reason, I find Jasmy cool. But even besides that, 25 cents, considering current circulating supply, market cap at that point would be around $12.5 billion. I mean, how is that too outlandish, maybe, in my perspective? Because if I take a look at something like Dogecoin, which reached over $80 billion in market cap back in 2021, Shiba Inu that year also reaching around $40 billion, I mean, that doesn't seem too outlandish to me. Now, only time will tell, but really 25 cents is around a 12x from here. It's not like it's a 100x away or something like that. This is my perspective. Now, if Jasmy needed like a $200 billion market cap for whatever reason to reach the price of 25 cents, then that's a little bit ridiculous to me. Like, I wouldn't even believe in that, right? But then at the same time, something like this doesn't seem too outlandish, but only time will tell, and I'm still going to stay patient. I'm going to still continue to dollar cost average into Jasmy, because much like a long time ago, when I was talking about Jasmy, wasn't doing good. And then suddenly it had that rise. Now, I was not able to know the exact moment in time, but I was holding anyways, right? So then, in my opinion, if let's say we do maybe see a bigger, recovery when it comes to Jasmy, I will not know the exact time that will happen, because I do not know the future. So I'm just going to stay consistent, hold, and I just wait. That's it. Some people like to ask me, why don't you pull up a price chart, draw some random triangles? That's not my style. I mean, here's the thing. No matter what I do on that price chart, I draw some random triangle, falling wedge pattern, whatever, the market is not going to care, right? I see sometimes people out there, they make a video pulling up a price chart, they draw this triangle and they say, oh, things are going to happen at this time. And then suddenly it doesn't. And then they just adjust the triangle a little bit further. Then at that point, it's just a drawing. I mean, that's just me drawing at that point. For what? It doesn't do anything, in my perspective, at least for me. I would rather focus on the fundamentals, focus on what the project is doing, and holding and just waiting, that's it. Because I treat it like a marathon, it's not a sprint. I am not a day trader, so I wouldn't want to do that anyways. But yeah, even besides that point, I'm staying patient, and that's pretty much about it. But I do like seeing, good updates when it comes to Jasmy. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would greatly appreciate it. It's Willie the Captain, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.